All right, once we have created the stock and faced the object, it's now time to start removing some material. So we are in this video, we're going to remove the material out of the middle here, out of this end, and then cut out the shape. So to do that, we're going to use the pocket and the contour 2D milling operations. Um, 2D adaptive attempts to kind of do the whole thing, and I think right now while we're learning how to do it, we're going to focus on these two so we know when we can use them, and then in a later video on a later part we'll do the adaptive. So let's start with the pocket. All right. So when I click on the 2D pocket, you'll notice that my tool automatically loads from the previous operation, my half-inch flat end mill. When we machine, we want to make sure that we are always using the largest tool to the smallest tool and doing all the operations we can with each tool before we change them to save time. So this looks like we should be able to create our half-inch flat end mill to create this cutout. So we'll stick with that. All right. In our geometry tab, nothing is selected because it doesn't know exactly what we want. So it wants us to choose our pocket. When we choose our pocket, all we have to do is click on the bottom of the pocket, and it understands that there's walls that make up that pocket. We don't have to click anything else for this. Now, if we have a more advanced pocket, we can do some things to kind of keep the tool bit where we're going. But for right now, this is enough. The rest of these things we won't check for right now. Right? In our heights, again, we're not usually going to do too much here, although our stock top is no longer there. So the top height, we're going to change that top height to our model top. And so that drops just a little bit and is right at the top of the object because we've already removed that little bit of material. Why are we doing that? It'll come in here on our next step. Right? Our bottom height is the contour. We clicked on the bottom of the pocket, so we're going to leave it like it is. So then we'll go to our passes tab. And again, this looks a little different. So when we click on our passes tab here, we've got a couple different things that are happening. Cutting radius is the step over again. But what we want to look is down here at multiple depths and stock to leave. If we leave the stock on, the pocketing operation is usually considered what's called a roughing operation, which is trying to remove a large amount of material. And then if we desire a nice finish, we can go back through and create a finishing pass. In this case here, we're just going to remove all the material, and we're not going to do that. So we want to turn this off. Then we want to do is we want to set our multiple depths. When we remove material with our cutting bits, we can only remove a limited amount of material in each pass. So we're going to turn that on. Our rule of thumb here is that our roughing step down is going to be half the tool diameter. So right now I have a half-inch end mill. So this is going to be 0.25. The rest of this we're going to leave as is. And then I'm going to use the even step down. So what even step downs does is if with that unchecked, with that off, it's going to go a quarter of an inch, and then whatever's left on maybe the third pass. With even step downs, it's going to divide that distance by however many passes are no larger than a quarter of an inch, and do that. So that just kind of helps with our tool life, and there's no reason to cut more than we need to. Right. So we'll go to our linking tab, and we'll come back here in a second because you'll see something when we simulate this that we're gonna clean up and speed up. So we'll click OK. We'll get a warning sometimes, and it's just talking about the different heights. So we'll just click yes. It's okay. All right. So here we see our paths that are coming into our object, the path that it's going to take. Again, we can click on our setup to simulate it. We can hit play, and we can click on the little button with the dot next to it to jump past our facing operation. Right? So you'll see here as the cutting bit is moving in, it's moving in the circular direction, and then coming back out, going into the next kind of little area of the object there, again in that circular direction. And then once it's created those holes, kind of cleaning out the rest of the object here. So this is called a helix. That's the shape. The reason for that is because, unlike a drill, an end mill is flat on the bottom. And so if we're going into a very tough material, we want to try to only cut with the side of the teeth. So this 2-degree helix allows us to cut that. Now, we're not cutting aluminum or steel or whatever. We're just cutting butterboard, which is a polymer. So I'm going to double-click on my pocket and go back to that linking tab. And down here at the bottom where it says helix, I'm going to change the ramping angle from 2 degrees to 10 degrees. We could, with this tool and how soft the material is, go straight down, but it's better for us to just do it this way. So we're going to click OK here. Again, that warning comes up. Now you can see that red line is a lot less. I'm just going to simulate without the um, facing operation we have there. You can see it's a lot more aggressive. It happens way quicker as it goes in to the object. All right, so we're going to close out of that. All right. So we're going to run this one more time. I'm going to skip past here, and I'm going to skip to the end. And what I want to look at here is I want to look very closely into these corners. Looks like it doesn't cut all the way around the outside of our object. But this line that's left up here at the top, we applied a chamfer at the very end of our process to kind of soften those edges. But if we look, and we can't zoom in too much because it kind of disappears, which is a little bit of a pain. But if you look here, it seems like this distance is consistent, but in the corners, it appears to get kind of wider. And so I'm going to go back to my object and see. I don't think that this cutting tool got all the way into those edges there. So what's nice about using Inventor Cam with Inventor is I can go back into my model and I can find where that fillet was done. Right? So I added it as fillets, not as part of my sketch. And I'm going to double click on that fillet, and I'll see in the window that pops up, my fillet radius is 0.195. That half-inch end mill has a radius of 0.25. So it is not able to cut all the way into that radius. So that means I'm going to need to change the tool that I'm using to cut out the shape with. All right. I'm also going to double check while I'm here and see what this radius was. And again, when I click on that, it highlights. So this one I'm going to have the same problem with. All right. So I'm going to go back to my Cam tab. I don't need to delete or undo or anything like that. I can just go back into my pocket, change my tool. So now I'm going to go into my library again, and my 3/8, right? So we know that 0.5 is a radius of 0.25, 0.375, right? We can do that. We can do the math if we want there. So we can create, open up a calculator app, okay? And 0.375 divided by 2 is 0.1875. Right, that was 0.195, so that's going to clear that. So we can use the 3/8 inch end mill. If that was smaller than that, then we'd have to go down to our next size, right? So these kind of go every 1/8 of an inch down until we get to our smaller ones. So I'm going to select that. I don't have to do anything here. I don't have to do anything here. I do have to change my multiple depths though, because now I can't do 0.25 anymore. I now need to do that 0.1875. Still even step downs, still a 10-degree helix, and click OK. We get our warning, and now it changes where it goes into the object, the whole operation. If we simulate this, again, we skip past our facing operation. We can see that it cuts in here, starts to make that shape. And Inventor kind of does all this for us, so I don't know why it picks up and goes back in and does this and that. All right, we're all done. We look, all right, we kind of zoom out again a little bit. We can see that it's gone all the way into that corner, so we're good there. Right. Now, we're also going to pocket this out. Before, if I had pocketed that out, or if I was just going to contour that with my 1/2 inch end mill, and I was going to probably remove all that material. But now, with a smaller end mill, it's probably going to end up leaving some material here. So I'm going to add that to my pocket. So I'm going to double click on my pocket again. And where my selections are, I'm going to click on it so that it's highlighted. And I'm going to add that piece to it and click OK. And it's going to go through and grab that area. So we'll see what happens there. Right. So now I've cleaned that up. So that's my pocket operation, right? My 3/8 inch end mill. So now I want to go through and I'm going to cut out my shape here. All right. So when I cut out the shape, I'm going to create a contour, 2D contour. I'm going to stay with that 3/8 inch flat end mill. We could change the order of this a little bit. For right now, we're just going to stay with this. All right. Then our geometry, it asks us, what do we want to contour? So I want to contour the entire shape. My pocket got rid of this material here. So I want to contour the whole shape around the outside. So I'm going to go to the bottom and I'm going to choose this part, right? This is where what's left over as it gets chamfered. This is the outside shape of my object. So I'm going to click on that. Then when I get to my heights, I'm going to again change my top height to the model top. And because I clicked on that line that wasn't all the way on the bottom, I'm going to click on selection and flip this over and choose the very bottom, right? Because otherwise it would stop here, not here, right? In our passes tab, it looks a little different. We still have multiple depths. No stock to leave has already been unchecked. It's not because we unchecked it before, but it's because contouring is generally a finishing pass. We'll do our multiple depths, 0.1875, even step downs. Then our last tab, right, there's no ramping. It's just this linking. It's going to kind of move in and out in a curve. We'll leave it as it is and click OK. There's that warning again. And we'll see the path around our object. So once I'm done, I'm going to simulate the whole thing and watch it, make sure it all seems like it works, right? So this is fine. We're good here. There's that pocket operation that we saw. And I can jump forward a little bit. Gotta see what's happening. All right, couple paths, couple depths down as it goes through. I'm just kind of clicking as it jumps around a little bit. Also speed this up a little bit. All right, there's my moving out all the material and then kind of grabbing that on the outside. And then there's my contouring operation. We could change how we did this. We could have used that to remove some of this material, but we'd still have to get rid of it later, and it's really not going to save us a whole lot of time, right? So on my statistics, so right now I'm at 9 minutes on this part. There's not really anything I can do to speed it up. Next video, I'll show you how to drill and tap the holes, as well as add the chamfer to the top part of this object.